Russia received signals the US was launching an airstrike on a Syrian airbase about 30 minutes in advance, according to a US official. The US military fired more than 50 Tomahawk missiles at the Al-Shayrat military airfield near Homs at 8:45 p.m. on Thursday while President Donald Trump was hosting Chinese President Xi Jinping at his Mar-a-Lago resort in Florida. The Russian military, which has ground troops in Syria as well as a fleet of around 8 Mi-28 Newtons Night Hunter and Ka-52 Alligator gunships stationed at the base, received a deconfliction notice, according to Secretary of State Rex Tillerson. But no direct contact was made between the Trump administration and Russian President Vladimir Putin, with Tillerson emphasizing that they did not seek approval from Moscow. Tillerson also delivered some harsh words on Thursday and said Russia was either complicit in the sarin attack on Tuesday that killed more than 80 people or simply incompetent in getting Syria to fall in line. Tillerson cited a 2013 UN Security Council resolution calling the Syrian government to surrender chemical weapons under the supervision of the Russian government. Speaking just before the strikes were announced, Russia's deputy UN envoy, Vladimir Safronkov, said, "We are receiving direct signals on this theme that such a military operation is being prepared." He warned of negative consequences if the United States went ahead with military action and said the blame would be on shoulders of those who initiated such doubtful and tragic enterprise. Viktor Ozerov, head of the Defense Committee in the Russian Federation Council, suggested the airstrikes would put an additional strain on the relationship between the US and Moscow. He told state news agency RIA that cooperation between the Russian and US military branches may be shut down after the strike. He also added, US strikes on their Syrian aviation base may undermine the efforts in the fight against terrorism in Syria. Russia will demand an urgent UN Security Council meeting after the US airstrike on Syrian aviation base. This is an act of aggression against a UN member. Tillerson said the US had not communicated with the Russian government about the airstrike, although the response from our allies, as well as the region and the Middle East has been overwhelmingly supportive. He said, there were no discussions or prior contacts, nor had there been any since the attack with Moscow. US military action puts the new president at odds with Russia, which has air and ground forces in Syria after intervening in support of Assad in 2015 and turning the tide against mostly Sunni Muslim rebel groups. Trump has until now focused on defeating Islamic State militants in northern Syria, where US special forces are supporting Arab and Kurdish armed groups. And just 1 week ago, Tillerson said the longer-term status of President Assad will be decided by the Syrian people. Nikki Haley, the U.S. ambassador to the UN, echoed the sentiment, saying it was no longer a priority for the U.S. to focus on removing Assad from power. After the chemical attack, both Haley and Tillerson made a sharp U-turn on their statements. Haley held up graphic photographs and told the Security Council, "Yesterday morning we awoke to pictures of children foaming at the mouth, suffering convulsions, being carried in the arms of desperate parents. How many children have to die before Russia cares?" Haley asked. She slammed Russia's support of Assad and suggested the US would take action if the UN didn't step up to the plate. Instead of leaving the Syrian people to determine Assad's fate as he had previously suggested, Tillerson said Thursday, with the acts that he has taken, it would seem that there would be no role for him to govern the Syrian people. After the chemical attack on Tuesday, which the Turkish health ministry said involved the banned nerve agent sarin, Trump held Assad responsible even though the Syrian government denied any involvement and blamed militant rebels instead. Trump said, Assad choked out the lives of helpless men, women and children. It was a slow and brutal death for so many. Even beautiful babies were cruelly murdered in this very barbaric attack. Tillerson named and shamed Russia in the sarin attack, saying, the US and the Russian government entered into agreements whereby Russia would locate these chemical weapons, secure these weapons and destroy these weapons. Clearly Russia has failed in its responsibility to deliver on that commitment from 2013. Either Russia has been complicit or Russia has been simply incompetent in its ability to deliver on its end of that agreement. While National Security Advisor H.R. McMaster said the strike was launched in retaliation for the sarin attack on Tuesday, Tillerson said it did not signal an overall change in U.S. policy towards Syria. McMaster explained the decision-making process to reporters on Thursday night, with Tillerson adding, "This was a very deliberative process. There was a thorough examination of a wide range of options, and I think the president made the correct choice and made the correct decision. First, to be decisive in acting against this heinous act on the part of Bashar Assad, but acting in a way that was clearly directed at the source of this particular attack to send that strong message. Other things were considered. Those were rejected for any number of reasons. In my view, the president made the exact, correct decision," Tillerson said. Barack Obama considered and then rejected ordering a cruise missile strike in response to the use of chemical weapons by Assad's loyalists in 2013. Trump slammed his predecessor on Tuesday, saying, "President Obama said in 2012 that he would establish a red line against the use of chemical weapons and then did nothing." Trump ramped up his rhetoric, calling the chemical weapons attack an egregious crime before ordering Tomahawk missiles to strike the Al-Shayrat military airfield. Facing his biggest foreign policy crisis since taking office in January, Trump took the toughest direct U.S. action yet in Syria's 6-year-old civil war, raising the risk of confrontation with Russia and Iran, Assad's two main military backers. Years of previous attempts at changing Assad's behavior have all failed and failed very dramatically, Trump said from Mar-a-Lago where he was attending a summit with Chinese President Xi Jinping. It remains unclear whether Xi was briefed on the U.S. airstrike in Syria in advance. In February, China backed Russia's veto to protect the Syrian government from United Nations Security Council action, blocking a bid to impose sanctions over accusations of chemical weapons attacks during the 6-year Syrian conflict.